A 12-hour surgery. I just dragged a man back from the brink of death. The moment I pushed open the operating room doors, the new hospital CEO, Warren Hughes, slapped a termination notice across my face. Who authorized you to waste hospital resources like this? You're fired. Get out. I said only one word. Fine. I stripped off my white coat and flew to Europe. I turned off my phone. What they didn't know was that the mystery patient I'd just saved would be dead within a week without my follow-up care. One Leo, you're fired. The doors to the ER swung open, releasing a sterile, metallic tang of blood into the hallway. I've been on my feet for 12 straight hours. My legs were shaking. Warren Hughes, the new CEO, slammed the termination papers in my face. The corner of the page sliced my cheek. He jabbed a finger at my nose, spittle flying from his lips. Who the hell do you think you are? A 4-hour procedure, and you take 12? The equipment, the blood bank, the anesthesiology team, all tied up for you. What do you think this hospital is? Your personal stage? He was shouting. Everyone in the corridor stopped to watch the show. No one dared to speak, but their expressions said it all. Some looked sympathetic, some were numb, but most were practically giddy with schadenfreude. Before I could respond, a woman rushed forward, dropped on her knees, and grabbed my legs. Dr. Vance, thank you. Thank you for saving my husband's life. If it weren't for you, our family would be ruined. You're our savior. She was the patient's wife. Before the surgery, every top specialist in the country had told her that her husband wouldn't last the night. I was the one who went against their consensus, staked my own career on it, and wrestled him back from the grave. I tried to help her up, but Hughes shoved me aside. His voice was ice. Savior? He's a pariah at Apex Medical Center. Leo, open your eyes and look at this. He threw a thick stack of papers on the floor, and white sheets scattered across the linoleum. 621 complaints. All against you. Poor bedside manner. Ignoring hospital protocol. Extending surgeries for the sake of showing off. Increasing patient risk. A doctor with your lack of ethics is a disgrace to this institution. I glanced down at the evidence on the floor. The font and formatting on every complaint letter were identical. They'd been prepared long ago. It all clicked into place. They were throwing me to the wolves now that the dirty work was done. I am the only surgeon in the country who can independently perform what the community calls Thanatos-class heart surgeries, cases with less than a 1% chance of survival, written off by every other hospital. I've created countless medical miracles with these two hands. But because I never play by the book, because I'm willing to invent new techniques on the fly to save a life, I'd long been a thorn in the side of the new CEO, Warren Hughes. He'd come in with a mandate to clean house, and his first target was efficiency. Every surgery's duration, every supply used, had to conform to the KPIs he'd set. A low-efficiency doctor like me, who would occupy a state-of-the-art operating room for an entire day for a single patient, was a roadblock. Leo, I've been waiting for the chance to kick a reckless, lucky hack like you out of my hospital. Now, with this mountain of evidence, you can get the hell out. Hughes's voice was filled with triumphant glee. I looked at his face, twisted with excitement, then at the ridiculous evidence on the floor. Any last shred of loyalty I had for this hospital vanished. I didn't waste my breath arguing. I just said one word, fine. Then, I peeled off my blood-stained white coat, folded it neatly, and placed it on a counter. I turned and walked away. Behind me, I heard the patient's wife crying, Hughes's smug laughter, and the murmurs of the crowd. I didn't look back once. They thought I was leaving like a dog with its tail between its legs. But no one knew that in the last 30 minutes of the surgery, I had encrypted and uploaded 10 years of my life's work, all my core data and proprietary techniques, to a private server, then wiped it clean from the hospital network. That data was the secret sauce that had made Apex Medical the nation's holy grail for cardiac surgery. Without it, their so-called impossible surgeries would go back to being just that, impossible. I left the hospital, hailed a cab straight to O'Hare, and used a passport I kept ready for just such an occasion to board a flight to the Mediterranean. As the plane took off, I turned off my phone. Whatever storm was about to hit the hospital I left behind, and the mysterious VIP patient I'd saved, the one even Hughes was desperate to impress, had nothing to do with me. 2. I found a small villa on a quiet Greek island. I spent my days soaking up the sun and drinking wine, feeling more alive than I had in years. This life almost made me forget I'd once been a surgeon who barely had time to sleep. I ignored everything happening back in the States. Only my assistant, Ethan, contacted me occasionally through a secure messaging app. Leo, after you left, that old bastard Hughes immediately gave your position to his crony. Guy's name is Chadwick Keller. He spends all day in meetings, tearing apart your surgical plans. He calls your techniques backwoods medicine and says he's going to implement state-of-the-art methods from Europe. He's also telling everyone you were just lucky that you have no real technical skill and anyone could do your job. The usual weasels in the department are all kissing his ass now. I read the messages and laughed. A pack of fools. I'd heard of Chadwick Keller. He was a classic Nepo hire who'd gotten a certificate from some third-rate medical program overseas and hadn't even qualified as a lead surgeon. He got the deputy chief position because his father and Hughes were in bed together on some shady supply deals. As if a hack like him was qualified to critique my work. I didn't reply to Ethan. I closed the app and went back to my vacation. I knew the show starring Hughes and Keller was just getting started. The best part was yet to come. Sure enough, on the third day, another message from Ethan arrived. His tone was a mix of panic and grim satisfaction. Leo, it's hitting the fan. Hughes's honeymoon is officially over. We got 3 critical admissions today, all referred here for the Thanatos-class surgery you pioneered. 1 A-type aortic dissection could rupture at any second. 1 giant cardiac myxoma. His heart could stop any minute. And a rare Marfan syndrome case, even more complex than the last one you handled. My hand, holding a glass of wine, paused. Any one of those cases would make the chief of cardiology at any hospital in the country break out in a cold sweat. At Apex, they used to come straight to me. What's the status? I typed back. Status? That moron Keller and his elite team have been staring at 3D models on a screen all day. They can't even decide where to make the first incision. The families are raising hell in the lobby, screaming that the patients are going to die if they don't operate. Hughes's face is beet red. I heard him smashing things in his office. I could picture their pathetic incompetence. They had undoubtedly been poring over the standard case files I'd left behind. Too bad for them. The real genius. The life-or-death details, the suturing angles, the blood flow control techniques was all recorded in my unique shorthand in the personal research notes I had deleted. To anyone else, it would look like hieroglyphics. Keller is still talking a big game, insisting he can handle it, but he's terrified of stepping into the OR. He's got them on meds to stabilize, but those patients don't have much time. Leo, I bet by tomorrow, they'll be begging you to come back. I let out a soft laugh. Beg me? This was just the appetizer. The main course, the disaster that would truly bring them to their knees, hadn't even been served yet. 3. On the 4th day, Ethan called me directly. An international call. He was frantic. His voice trembled. I could hear the frantic beeping of monitors in the background. Leo, it's a catastrophe. The patient you saved last week, the one from the surgery right before you were fired, he's suffering from sudden complications. My gut tightened, but I wasn't surprised. That patient's condition had been extraordinarily complex, with a high risk of post-op complications. The recovery plan I designed for him was timed to the minute, requiring 24/7 monitoring by a specialist. Any deviation required immediate execution of the countermeasures I'd laid out. What kind of complications? I asked calmly. Acute cardiac tamponade. His BP dropped to 60/30. He's in cardiogenic shock. He's in the ICU now, and Keller and his team are just standing around him, afraid to move. Keller thinks a suture line on the heart ruptured. He says opening his chest now would kill him instantly on the table. Acute cardiac tamponade. It was the most dangerous possibility, and one I had anticipated. The procedure to fix it was detailed in my private notes. Without them, they were just a bunch of blind men holding scalpels. Leo, you have to come back. If you don't, he's going to die. Ethan's voice was cracking. Do you have any idea who that patient is? He's Rex Thornton, chairman of Thornton Industries. He's on the Forbes top 10 list. If a man like that dies in our hospital, they'll burn this place to the ground. Rex Thornton. The name was legendary. A titan who could make Wall Street tremble with a single phone call. No wonder Hughes had the guts to fire me. He thought he had it all figured out. If the surgery succeeded, he'd take the credit and earn a favor from the Thornton family. If it failed, he'd pin the blame on me. But now, the man I had saved was about to die from post-op complications under his care. That was a weight too heavy for Warren Hughes to bear. What are Hughes and Keller doing? I asked flatly. They're losing their minds. They wheeled Mr. Thornton into the OR, but no one dares to operate. I saw Keller flipping through your surgical report like it was written in Greek. The Thornton family security has locked down the hospital exits. His son, Marcus Thornton, is standing right outside the ICU. He said if his father dies, he's going to make every member of the hospital's board of directors jump off the roof. Have they tried to call me? Of course. Your U.S. number is disconnected. They're pulling every string they have. Try to find you anywhere in the world. Leo, in the last hour, Apex Medical's stock has plummeted. The news is all over the internet. Stories about how we force out top surgeons over KPIs and let patients die. On the other end of the line, Ethan's voice was a cocktail of despair and terror. And I just listened. Everything was going according to plan. Warren Hughes, Chadwick Keller, and all the people who had mocked and ostracized me. What were they feeling now? Regret? Fear? Or just pure, unadulterated despair? I hung up and looked out at the sea. For the next 2 days, I completely vanished. I got a local SIM card and spent my time exploring the small town, taking photos, and eating incredible food. Life was good. During that time, I even managed to help out the town's small clinic. A local fisherman was suffering from a severe case of the bends. He had a massive gas embolism in his aorta and was on the verge of death. The local doctor was helpless and had already told the family to prepare for the worst. I happened to be passing by, took one look, and took over. Without any advanced equipment, I asked for a few sterilized silver needles and, using a compression technique I developed myself, managed to break up and disperse the air bubble clogging his heart. This technique, what I called micropercussive thrombolysis, was one of the very backwoods methods Hughes had condemned me for. When the fisherman was revived, the entire town erupted. The story even made international news. A medical documentary crew flew in to interview me. And when my photo and story appeared on a major news site under the headline, Miracle Worker in Greece, the surgeon who cheats death with his bare hands, the pack of hyenas back home finally caught my scent. That day, I was sitting at a seaside cafe, sipping a coffee. A strange international number called my phone. I answered. A trembling, sycophantic voice came through the line. It was Mr. Davison, one of the hospital's board members, an old fox who only cared about money. Dr. Vance, we finally found you. Is there something I can help you with? My tone was placid. The hospital, we've had a bit of an incident. We need you to come back. He was still trying to sound dignified. I chuckled. Mr. Davison, as I recall, I'm no longer an employee of Apex Medical Center. What does the hospital's business have to do with an unemployed man like me? Vance, the voice on the phone changed abruptly. It was Hughes. His voice was hoarse and broken. What the hell do you want? Mr. Thornton is dying. If you don't get back here, you can expect to hear from the Thornton family's lawyers. They'll sue you into oblivion. Sue me? I laughed as if it were the funniest joke I'd ever heard. Mr. Hughes, let's not forget, you're the one who fired me in front of the entire hospital. I have no physician-patient relationship with Mr. Thornton. Isn't his attending physician your highly paid, brilliant import, Dr. Keller? You should be begging him, not harassing me. Hughes was so enraged he nearly choked. There was a commotion on the other end, and Davison got back on the line. This time, all pretense was gone. Dr. Vance, our miracle worker. We were wrong. We were blind. We were utter fools. Please, for the sake of the hospital you once served, please come back and save Mr. Thornton. If you come back, we'll agree to any conditions. Anything you want. Davison's voice was thick with desperation, on the verge of tears. From commands, to threats, to begging. All in a matter of days. How ironic. I watched a seagull circle in the distance, and took a slow sip of my coffee. Conditions? I said, my voice light. All right then, let's talk about my conditions. 5 first. My voice, carried across the globe, was as cold and sharp as a scalpel. A public apology to me, posted for 3 days on the homepage of the Apex Medical Center website and on the front page of every major news outlet. The letter must explicitly state that the 600 complaints were fabricated and that my reputation is to be fully restored. Warren Hughes and everyone else involved in this scheme will stand before a hospital-wide assembly, bow their heads in apology to me, and then they'll be fired. There was dead silence on the line. Second, I continued, giving them no time to recover. I will return as an independent medical consultant. I will have final say and veto power over all critical care surgeries. Furthermore, a new cardiothoracic special projects unit will be formed under my direct command. I will have sole authority over its members, budget, and mission, with no interference from the board. As for my compensation, I paused, dropping the bomb. It's simple. My fee for every surgery I personally lead will be 100 times my previous rate. Additionally, I will receive a 10% royalty on all future patents for new medicines and technologies developed by the hospital's cardiac division. Third, my voice grew even colder. Every single person who slandered me, schemed against me, or stood in my way, including your golden boy, Chadwick Keller, must submit to a retraining and recertification program. I set the standards. Those who fail will be reassigned to the medical records archive. Anyone who doesn't like it can walk. Every word was a hammer blow, striking them right in the heart. Leo, you can't be serious. Hughes finally exploded, roaring into the phone. This is extortion. You're taking advantage of the situation. Am I? I sneered. Mr. Hughes, you were willing to let a man die on the table to protect your KPIs and your career. Then you nearly let him die again from sheer incompetence. What you did wasn't taking advantage. It was gross negligence and manslaughter. I'm just taking back what I'm owed. And while I'm at it, I'm going to teach you all a lesson about respect for skill and what the rules really are. You don't have to agree, I said, cutting him off before he could sputter another word. But let me remind you, for every minute you delay, Mr. Thornton's cardiac tamponade causes more irreversible muscle death. His chance of survival is dropping as we speak. If he dies, what you'll be facing won't be extortion. I think we both know what the Thornton family is capable of. I hung up the phone. I glanced at the dark screen. A new message from Ethan had just appeared. Leo, the Thorntons have invited the entire board of directors to the hospital. They've given them an ultimatum. If you don't appear in 12 hours, they're going to help the entire board cool off by having them jump from a roof. I smiled. I knew they had no choice. Less than 10 minutes later, Davison called back. His voice was now completely stripped of pride, dripping with submission. Dr. Vance, we agree. We agree to everything. Every single one of your conditions, we agree. Please, I'm begging you, come back to the States immediately. Mr. Thornton's private jet has already taken off to pick you up. It will be at your island in 2 hours. Acknowledged. I hung up, finished the last of my coffee, and stood up. Facing the sea breeze, I walked toward the battlefield that was about to become my kingdom. This time, I wasn't just a doctor. I was coming back to write the rules. 6th the Thornton's Gulfstream G650 moved like lightning. By the time I set foot on the grounds of Apex Medical Center again, dawn was just breaking over Chicago. A crowd of people was standing at the hospital entrance. The entire board of directors, led by Davison, along with every department head, stood in the freezing wind in their best suits. Their faces were blue with cold, but they stood ramrod straight. When I stepped out of the car, Davison was the first to rush over, his face a mask of smiles, his body bent in a 90-degree bow. Dr. Vance, you're finally back. Thank you for coming. We are forever in your debt. I ignored him. My gaze shot past him like a laser, landing on Warren Hughes and Chadwick Keller, who stood at the back of the crowd, their faces as white as sheets. Hughes's eyes burned with a mixture of hatred, resentment, and humiliation. Keller was just terrified. He couldn't even meet my gaze. My first condition, has it been met? I asked coldly. My voice was quiet, but it made everyone present shiver. Yes, absolutely, Davison stammered, nodding obsequiously. The apology went live at midnight. It's on the front page of every major news site. The hospital-wide assembly is ready. We can begin whenever you are. Now, I said, I have no time to waste. Neither does Mr. Thornton. Of course. This way, Dr. Vance. The crowd of executives and doctors parted, forming a path for me as I walked toward the main auditorium. I had walked this hall 1,000 times, but never like this. Every eye was fixed on me, a mixture of awe, fear, curiosity, and envy. Inside the auditorium, every seat was filled. I ignored everyone, walked straight to the stage, and sat down in the center chair, the one that had belonged to the CEO. Davison stood beside me like a master of ceremonies, holding a microphone to announce the board's latest decisions. Following an emergency meeting, the board has voted to terminate the employment of Mr. Warren Hughes as Chief Executive Officer and Mr. Chadwick Keller as Deputy Chief of Cardiothoracic Surgery. Furthermore, regarding the baseless accusations previously made against Dr. Leo Vance, this hospital hereby publicly retracts all statements and offers our most sincere and profound apologies. Next, it was Hughes's turn to make his public statement. He stood there like a puppet with its strings cut, holding a script, his voice trembling as he read the humiliating words. Due to my own personal jealousy and prejudice, I abuse my authority to suppress a talented doctor. I have failed this hospital, and I have wronged Dr. Vance. Every word he spoke was like a public self-flogging. In the audience, the same people who had laughed at my dismissal now stared at the floor, afraid to even breathe. I looked at Hughes's face, contorted with shame, and felt nothing. This was only the beginning. Next, I said flatly. Chadwick Keller shuffled to the podium, shaking so badly he could barely speak. He practically wept his way through his confession. That's enough, I interrupted, annoyed. Stop wasting time. Now, take me to the patient. I stood up, not giving the clowns another glance, and walked out toward the ICU. Behind me, there was only silence. The atmosphere in the ICU was thick with tension. Rex Thornton lay on the bed, a web of tubes connecting him to a symphony of machines. The lines on the cardiac monitor were as faint as a candle flame in a hurricane. The core members of the Thornton family were waiting outside, led by Rex's eldest son, Marcus Thornton. He saw me and wasted no time. His eyes scanned me like an X-ray. You're Leo Vance? I am. You know my father's condition. I don't care about your drama with this hospital. I only care about one thing. He took a step forward, his presence overwhelming. Save him, and you will be a friend to the Thornton family for life. We will owe you a debt that can never be repaid. But if you fail... He didn't finish, but the cold fury in his eyes said everything. Step aside, I said, and pushed through the doors into the ICU. Ethan was already inside, scrubbed in and waiting. When he saw me, his eyes welled up. Leo, he choked out. Prep for surgery, I said, all business, as I began to scrub in. But, Leo, the patient's vitals. Opening his chest now is too risky. Keller said the pressure change could cause his heart to rupture on the spot. Ethan said anxiously as he helped me into a surgical gown. Who said anything about opening his chest? I walked to the operating table, glanced at the standard surgical tray, and frowned. Give me a pericardial puncture and drainage kit, and set up a femoral venous bypass. I began issuing orders. The other doctors in the room froze. A younger resident finally spoke up. Dr. Vance, performing a pericardiocentesis for acute tamponade is contraindicated in every textbook. It could kill him. I shot him a look that could freeze fire, then throw out the textbook. I ignored any further questions. Holding my breath, I use an ultrasound to guide the needle, precisely inserting it through the apex of the heart into the pericardial sac. The maneuver required absolute stability, precision, and confidence. A millimeter off in any direction meant the difference between life and death. Everyone in the room, including Marcus Thornton watching through the glass, held their breath. Only I was calm, my hand as steady as stone. The moment the needle pierced the pericardium, a torrent of dark, bloody fluid gushed out through the drainage tube. On the monitor, the dying blood pressure curve miraculously began to climb. BP is rising, 80/50. Heart rate stabilizing. We have a sinus rhythm. Suppressed gasps of amazement filled the room. But that was just the first step. The real challenge was repairing the ruptured suture line without performing open-heart surgery. Bring me my kit, I said to Ethan. Ethan understood immediately. From a heavy-duty metal case, he retrieved a velvet-wrapped instrument box. I had the Thorntons' jet make a stop at my villa overseas to pick it up. I opened the box. Inside was a set of bizarrely shaped micro-instruments, far thinner and longer than standard tools, with various microclaws, forceps, and suturing needles at their tips. These were my own designs, custom forged for me by a master craftsman in Germany. It was the only set in the world. "What is that?" someone whispered in awe. "Shut up and watch," I said coldly. As everyone watched in stunned silence, I manipulated the instruments through the single, centimeter-wide puncture site and into Rex Thornton's pericardial cavity. What followed was, to them, nothing short of a miracle. On the monitor, it was like my hands had a will of their own. The tiny instrument tips moved with impossible precision, separating adhesions, locating the minuscule tear in the suture line, and then, using a proprietary microweave technique, seamlessly repairing and reinforcing the rupture. The entire process was fluid, efficient, and utterly flawless. Every surgeon in the room, including the senior chiefs who had once sneered at me, watched in a state of shock, sweat beading on their foreheads. 30 minutes later, I set down the instruments. Done. On the monitor, all of Rex Thornton's vital signs were stable. A crisis that should have been a death sentence had been resolved with a technique they couldn't even begin to comprehend. I stripped off my gloves and gown and walked out of the ICU. Marcus Thornton and his family immediately swarmed me. "My father?" Marcus asked, his voice laced with a tension I hadn't heard before. "He's stable," I said calmly. "He can be moved to a regular room in 3 days. I'll be personally overseeing his recovery plan." Marcus Thornton stared at me, his eyes filled with a potent mix of shock, respect, and a hint of fear for what might have been. He didn't say another word. He simply gave me a deep, formal 90-degree bow. "Dr. Vance, thank you is not a strong enough word. From this day forward, you are the most honored friend of the Thornton family." The news that I had once again pulled Rex Thornton back from death's door detonated like a bomb throughout Apex Medical Center and the entire national medical community. Overnight, I, Leo Vance, went from a disgraced problem doctor to a living legend. The physicians who had once ridiculed me now avoided my gaze, practically diving into closets to avoid crossing my path in the hallway. My retraining program officially began. The first person I called into my new office was Chadwick Keller. He stood before me like a prisoner awaiting sentencing, head bowed. "Dr. Keller," I said, leaning back in the CEO's leather chair and tapping a pen on the desk. "I hear you once described my surgical techniques as backwoods medicine." "No, that's not true, Dr. Vance, sir. I was talking nonsense. I was a blind fool." Beads of sweat dripped down his forehead. "Is that so?" I pushed a patient file across the desk to him. "This man was just admitted yesterday. End-stage dilated cardiomyopathy. His heart is 3 times the normal size, and he's at immediate risk of sudden cardiac death. I want a complete surgical plan from you, using your state-of-the-art techniques from Europe, of course." Keller's hands trembled as he picked up the file. After reading only 2 lines, his face went paler than the paper. To him, this case was indecipherable. I, he stammered for a full minute, unable to form a coherent sentence. "Can't do it." I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "I suppose that's fair. You can't even handle routine procedures. Expecting you to tackle this would be cruel." I stood and walked over to him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Effective today, you are no longer deputy chief." Keller's entire body flinched. "You will report to the OR and serve as my first assistant." "No, you're not even qualified for that. You'll start with the basics, holding retractors and closing incisions. You will not touch a scalpel again until I say you can." Keller's face turned a deep, shameful red, and tears of humiliation welled in his eyes. For a foreign-trained expert, to be demoted to a glorified med student's grunt work was a fate worse than being fired. "Is there a problem?" I raised an eyebrow. No, sir. I accept. Thank you, Dr. Vance, for the opportunity." Under my unwavering gaze, he finally forced out the words, each one tasting like ash in his mouth. One by one, I brought in the others, the ones who had schemed against me, who had gleefully signed those fake complaint letters. Some were sentenced to recharting 3 years of patient files by hand. Others were demoted to the chaos of the ER to get a real taste of what life and death meant. A few of the loudest sycophants were simply kicked out of the cardiothoracic department for failing to meet technical standards. I purged the entire department with surgical precision. Ethan watched it all unfold, his jaw practically on the floor. "Leo, this is brutal," he told me in private. "They're calling you the Reaper behind your back." Brutal? I looked out the window at the city below. Mercy is a luxury you grant to friends, not enemies. I'm just teaching them a simple lesson. When a life is on the line, skill is the only thing that matters. And without it, they aren't even qualified to be my enemy. While the hospital's personnel shakedown was in full swing, I was busy on another front. I went directly to Marcus Thornton and asked him to use his family's resources to investigate everything Warren Hughes had done during his tenure as CEO. The power of the Thornton family was terrifying. Less than 3 days later, a report hundreds of pages thick landed on my desk. It detailed how Hughes had used his position to embezzle millions, taking massive kickbacks on everything from equipment procurement and pharmaceutical contracts to new construction projects. His entire efficiency reform was just a smokescreen to cover the financial holes he was creating. And Chadwick Keller had been given his position because his father, the CEO of the country's largest medical device distributor, was funneling money to Hughes. The 621 complaints had been fabricated by API, firm on his father's payroll. The chain of evidence was ironclad. I anonymously forwarded the entire report to the FBI and the district attorney's office. The next day, a motorcade of black sedans pulled quietly up to Apex Medical Center. The once untouchable Warren Hughes was led out in handcuffs by 2 stone-faced agents, in full view of the entire hospital staff. His face was ashen, his legs buckled, and he had to be practically dragged into the car. He wasn't the only one. A number of executives from the finance and procurement departments were taken into custody as well. The deep-seated corruption at Apex was ripped open for the world to see, creating a media firestorm. To quell the public outcry and to show their allegiance to both me and the Thornton family, the board of directors held another emergency meeting. There, Mr. Davison formally announced that they were offering me the position of Chief Executive Officer of Apex Medical Center, along with a 5% equity stake in the hospital. No strings attached. This time, I didn't refuse. My first act as CEO was to walk into a meeting with every senior manager in the hospital, take the KPI and efficiency manual written by Warren Hughes, and personally feed it into a paper shredder. I announced that from that day forward, Apex Medical would be judged by only 2 metrics: patient outcomes and patient satisfaction. A doctor's compensation would be tied directly to the number of lives they saved and the complexity of the challenges they overcame. For those who were brilliant and dedicated, the sky was the limit. For those who were merely adequate, the door was open. Using a massive capital injection from the board and the Thornton family, I established the Apex Fund for Advanced Medical Research. I encouraged every doctor to challenge the impossible, to develop new procedures, and to solve medicine's greatest puzzles. The hospital would fund all research. The patents for any discoveries would belong to the doctors and their teams. These initiatives sent shockwaves through the entire healthcare industry. Talented, ambitious young doctors from all over the country flocked to Chicago, desperate for a chance to join my team. Apex Medical Center, once shrouded in bureaucratic decay, was reborn with a new and unprecedented vitality. I sat in the office that had once belonged to Warren Hughes, looking out over the sprawling city. My era had just begun, and as for all the people who had once looked down on me, now all they could do was look up.